what's up? My name is Dom. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new to my channel, I typically make bookish content, movie content, and anything else in between because I like to do whatever I want on this channel, and tonight is going to be movie content. In the year 2024, I watched 137 movies, and for today's video, we are going to discuss my top 10 worst films that I watched. There is actually a lot to choose from because I discussed this in my last video, but the quality of 2024 was not up to par compared to 2023. A lot of movies I rated below 3 stars. So really I had more than enough to choose from, and because there was so much, I'm also going to mention some honorable mentions. For my best books and best movie video, I did do some honorable mentions. My worst books I didn't, just because I didn't have enough books to do that, but I have more than enough movies to do that. So the order I'm going to be talking about everything is from 10 to 2, my honorable mentions from 11 to 15, and then the absolute worst movie that I watched in 2024. So without further ado, let's get started. So at number 10, we have a horror movie called Imaginary. This is about a woman who moves back into her childhood home with her new family, and her teddy bear from her childhood is haunting one of her stepdaughters. Yes, that sounds absolutely ridiculous, and it wasn't like a movie I rushed to see. It was just, I needed one more movie. Whatever month this came out, I needed one more movie in order to make my AMC stubs worth it, so why not this? And given that synopsis, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go in and have a great goofy time. Like, I knew it was going to be bad, but I at least wanted it to be fun. And while it was bad, as I predicted, it wasn't fun at all. Right off the bat, this movie feels very tropey, and I know all stories are made up of tropes. You need them in order to tell a story. But what I mean by that, I just feel like the writers of this movie, they chose the tropes and the title and wrote around them rather than thinking of a plot organically and having the tropes come to them as they write out the draft and thinking about the title when it's all over. And because of that, this movie also felt very formulaic. Most of this movie is definitely something you've seen before, and I say most because at the end, like the last third, I do have to give them credit for trying to be original because I was expecting this to be, you know, demonic, like a lot of these horror movies deal with Christian mythology. But it wasn't. The horror character is its own evil being, so I give credit for them to being original. However, the tone of the last third of the movie felt way too over the top, especially compared to the first 2/3. And there's a plot twist near the end there that's supposed to shock you, but I kind of saw it coming, and it got resolved way too fast to the point where it's like, it was kind of unneeded. So I ended up giving this movie 2 out of 5 stars. At number 9, we have another horror movie. Horror was like the genre I watched in 2024, so a lot of these are actually going to be horror, either that or Christmas. But anyway, at number 9, we have the movie The Ritual. This is about a group of guys who go on a hiking trip as a memoriam for their friend that was killed. And I'm gonna be honest with y'all, I don't have a lot to say about this movie. The only good thing I liked about it was the music at the end. I thought the music was very emotional, but really, this movie was very forgettable for me. I lost interest within the first 20 minutes, and I don't really know why. It was just, you ever watch a movie and you're like, no, I don't care. No rhyme or reason, you just stopped caring, because that's how I felt about this movie. It's just another thing I felt like I've seen before, especially on those like sci-fi channels or like those made-for-TV movies. Some of it was predictable, and I just did not care for any of the characters, which is maybe why I lost interest so fast. So I gave this 2 out of 5 stars. At number 8, we have the movie Night Swim, which is about a family moves into a new house and there's a haunted swimming pool. This sounds very dumb and stupid, and it's as dumb and stupid as it sounds. This is another movie I watched because I wanted to make my AMC stubs worth it, and this was like the only movie available at the time, because I watched this in January of last year, just for the Oscar movies to be announced, and then a bunch of them went to theaters. So I ended up not needing to see this movie to make my stubs worth it, but we saw it, it's terrible. Given the plot and everything they were going for, no good acting or cool scene could have saved this movie. And the acting ended up being subpar anyway, and that has to be a director's thing because Carrie Condon's in this, and I've seen Carrie Condon in other things, and she does like a pretty great job. She was in the Banshees of Inisherin, and she was nominated for that role. But even her acting in this was really bad. Her accent was terrible. She can, bless her, but she could not do an American accent to save her life, and that was actually actually kind of distracting. But at the same time, I just feel bad for everyone involved because they clearly did it for the paycheck, because when you read this plot, what else are you supposed to do? And despite how ridiculous and stupid and dumb it was also just so boring, so I can't even say it was so bad it's good. I gave this 2 out of 5 stars. Number 7, another horror movie, and that is Tarot. This is about a group of friends who are on a camping trip and they play with a deck of haunted tarot cards. This movie is extremely generic. It feels like every other gateway horror I've seen back when I was like 11, 12, trying to get into the genre for the first time. So this maybe I don't know, maybe, disclaimer, maybe I was too old for this, which I don't really want to believe because the main characters are all college age and I'm in my 20s, so I'm not that far off from this age group. But when I mean generic, I also mean formulaic, because it's about a group of elder teens, early 20-year-olds doing something stupid. In this case, they're playing with tarot cards that they all had the feeling they shouldn't have played with in the first place. They do a stupid thing later that bites them in the ass. One by one, they start dying. This old woman comes in with a bunch of wisdom and tells them the history of the haunted item. She tries to help them, but then gets killed off right away. And then the thing that always gets me about these type of horror movies, you get the history of the haunted item, but the history of the haunted item makes for such a better story than what the movie itself is getting. I'd rather see a movie about the background of these tarot cards, because I thought that was pretty cool. But no, instead I have to see a movie with a bunch of elder teens, early 20s, doing stupid shit, constantly screaming and panting, and just me, myself, not having a good time. This movie had some Disney Channel style acting and dialogue, which is a little shocking for me given that this was a theatrical release. If it was a made-for-TV movie on one of those channels, I would forgive it a bit, but definitely not for a theatrical release. And then the attempted humor in this is obnoxious and it falls flat, especially for one character in particular, the comedic relief character. He's very boisterous, just not my type of humor. I got annoyed with him pretty easily. And I was so fed up with this movie, I can't even tell you how the problem was solved. I genuinely don't remember. But the thing that pissed me off the most was actually the post-credits scene. What happens in that scene was clearly for comedic reasons, but whoever wrote this movie I don't think thought about like the repercussions of it, because the thing that happens, it breaks the rule of the tarot. So to me as a viewer, and if I'm to think about the writing of this like critically, what happens in the post-credit scene just means to me the kids in this movie could have saved themselves the entire time. Easily save themselves. So this movie just felt like a big waste of time. I gave this 2 out of 5 stars. And at number 6, the first non-horror movie on this list, it's actually an Oscar Best Picture winner, and that is Cavalcade. In this movie, we explore the lives of a London family from 1899 to 1933. The plot of this movie is essentially kind of like Forrest Gump. In Forrest Gump, it's like one character going through the events of American history. In this movie, it's a singular family going through the events of English history. And honestly, this is another one where I don't have a lot to tell y'all. I was bored out of my mind. I didn't care for any of these characters, so I stopped paying attention. Honest to God, the only scene I can even remotely remember is the Titanic scene. And like the husband and the wife were having a conversation at the end of the movie. I watched this just to say I did because I'm trying to watch all the Best Picture nominees, but I will not be recommending this and rewatching it anytime soon. So 2 out of 5 stars. At number 5, we have a Christmas movie that I only watched for the first time this year. I forgot to mention in the beginning of the video, none of these movies were rewatches. They're all new to me. This is an old one, kind of a classic, I guess, but that's Four Christmases. This is with Reese Witherspoon and Vince Vaughn. And in this one, they typically go on vacation every year, lying to their families so that they don't have to spend Christmas with them. But then one year, they get caught in their ruse, and now for this year's Christmas, they have to spend it with 4 different families. 4 because both of them have a set of divorced parents. This is a comedy, and I have a very hard time with the genre of comedy. Not that I dislike the concept of it, it's just a lot of the famous comedies out there aren't really my type of humor, and this is unfortunately one of them. I had a very hard time with all of the characters in this. The only 2 remotely like okay characters were our main couple. But my biggest issue with this movie and just why I don't like it is that everyone in this movie was so fucking mean. And I know that's kind of the point, because part of why this couple would always go on a vacation every year is because of how mean their families are to them. They're not treated right. So I know that's the point. But for me personally, it just got to the point, like the jokes and what the family members were saying, it just got to the point that it just wasn't funny. And I just genuinely felt bad for this couple and like wanted to punch everyone in the face. Like I felt myself getting viscerally angry. I don't know if I have like familial trauma I need to figure out or something, and I was just projecting. But like I don't understand. I don't understand why this is somewhat, I don't want to say it's well loved. I don't know if it's that popular, but I don't know. I had a very hard time with this. I had a very hard time forgiving everyone in the end. And this is not my first Vince Vaughn movie, and it's definitely not the first I disliked. So I think I just really don't like Vince Vaughn's style of humor. So I won't be reaching for his movies anytime soon. I gave this one 1.5 out of 5 stars. At number 4, we have Kevin Costner's new big project, which is Horizon: An American Saga, Chapter 1. Kevin Costner is making a 4-part movie series about different groups of people going through the Civil War era before, during, and after. And this was the first installment. So basically in this movie we're getting the lay of the land, we're meeting everyone, we're seeing where everything's gonna take place. So not too much plot, despite being 3 hours long. Not too much plot happens in this movie. This movie, I'm gonna give a disclaimer for, I maybe should not have seen this. Westerns were just really never my thing. The only reason I watched this is because I follow Isabelle Fuhrman, who's in the Orphan movies and The Hunger Games. That's what she's mostly known for. She talked about this movie nonstop over the summer, which is understandable because she is in it. But the way she talked about it, and I do really like her acting, I was like, okay, maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised. And there are 2 positives. I was pleasantly surprised by a couple things. One of them being is that this does show all sides. So not only are we learning about the white families who made a home in these areas, but we are learning about the Native Americans who were hurt by this era of time. And the other thing I like, there's a scene where the rich people get their comeuppance. However, other than that, I was really not pleasantly surprised by this movie. I was unfortunately very bored, actually. In the 3 hours that this movie took to be told, I managed to not give a single flying fuck about a single character, and that includes Isabelle Fuhrman's, bless her heart, as much as I love and appreciate her. And if I don't care about the people who these events happen to, why would I care about the movie in general? And it's not like I hated the characters. And it's honestly, it's not like I disliked them either. I think I just felt so indifferent about them. And it's because despite being 3 hours, so much happens in this movie, but at the same time it feels like nothing happens. There were just way too many characters introduced, and I understand we're only, given that there's going to be 4 movies, this is only like a quarter of the story, so not all the character development can happen in this movie. But what little there is, it felt like it happened off screen. There was also constant jumping around from scene to scene, family to family, character to character, that I feel like I wasn't given enough time to breathe and like soak in what I saw and like get to know these people. This movie felt weirdly slow, but then simultaneously way too fast at the same time, so definitely awkward pacing. And it doesn't really have a middle or an end, like it's not at all conclusive, and again, because it's part 1 of 4, but still as a standalone, no middle or end. The way this movie was edited or put together, whatever, it felt more like a TV show. Like this story should have been a TV show rather than one very, very long movie divided into 4 parts. And I even looked it up too. I looked up if this was supposed to be a TV show, and apparently I'm not alone in thinking this, but despite not being alone in thinking that, Kevin Costner has said he wanted this to be 4 movies from the jump, so you do you, dude. I won't be watching the other parts of this story. Part 2, some people have seen. It was supposed to be in theaters in August, but for some reason it got pulled. The few people who have seen it had nothing but good things to say about it. They say it's much better than part 1. I know parts 3 and 4 haven't even been made yet, but the reason I won't be continuing despite the glowing reviews for the second movie is because I'm a firm believer that I shouldn't have to sit through a slog to get to the other parts. So I gave this movie 1.5 out of 5 stars. At number 3, we have a Christmas short, and it's about like 30 to 40 minutes long. It's Mickey and the Very Many Christmases. And this is about Mickey Mouse wishing every day were Christmas, and once his wish is granted, he realizes it's not all it's cracked up to be. So when I was actively watching this, I sat there just in perpetual confusion. and annoyance. And then when the movie ended, I felt like a seething anger because I felt like I wasted my time. Probably unnecessary because despite not liking this, I feel like I have seen worse before, but just something about this really pissed me off. Maybe I'm too old because the jokes were definitely juvenile and annoying. And maybe another reason is because I just couldn't have a suspension of disbelief because it's one of those movies when it repeats Christmas every day, it repeats it to a T. So if Goofy slipped and fell on the original Christmas Day, he's gonna slip and fall for the rest that Mickey goes through. So it got to the point where he was able to predict all the actions. Every time someone does a movie like this, they always do that concept, which I get, but at the same time, I wish they would add some slight differences and make more characters aware about it. Just to one, spice things up a bit, and two, because is the clock gonna reset for next year's Christmas and then they spend a year going through a new cycle, or is it the same Christmas that you wished upon a star for? Do you know what I mean? So I don't know why I could suspend my disbelief for that, but I was just having a very annoying time with this, and I feel like Disney's done this before, and it was also a slog despite being a short. I've seen 3-hour movies that I felt like went by faster than this one, which is saying something. So I'm very confused why I hated this so much because I feel like I've definitely seen worse, but I gave this 1 out of 5 stars. At number 2, we have one of those Netflix Hallmark-esque movies, and that is Irish Wish. In this movie, Maddie, who is played by Lindsay Lohan, she goes to Ireland for a wedding, and at this wedding, the man that she's in love with is getting married to her best friend. And after making a wish on the stone, she is thrusted into another universe where she is the one engaged to this guy, and she is learning that maybe he really isn't the one. And you know what? For a romance, this had some awful love interests. I cannot remember their names for the life of me, so I'm just going to refer to them as Guy 1 being the fiance, and then Guy 2 being the guy she actually falls in love with. So Guy number 1, given that plot, like, you know she's not going to end up with him. Like, something about him has to be off for her to see that. But he was just such a dick. And not just to her, but a dick to everyone around him, to the point where I was like, girl, what did you see in him in the first place? Like, other Hallmark and Hallmark-esque movies that done this plot before, there was at least something there. Something that made sense for them to fall in love. But this one I didn't get it. And then Guy number 2, the guy she actually falls in love with, he had no fucking personality, like, at all. I was watching a cardboard box. When you compare the two and think about the writing of these two characters, Guy number 1 was clearly written to be extra horrible so that he could make Guy number 2 look better despite the lack of personality. And to me, that is just lazy writing, and it's also just giving Twilight, because that's kind of how, like, Twilight was written. Like, you have Bella, who's a lack of personality, and then all the girls around her were just written to be terrible, mean people so that Bella looked good by default. That's what Irish Wish reminds me of. But either way, I didn't see what Maddie saw in either of these guys. Like, I could see why she ended up with Guy number 2 simply because he wasn't an asshole like Guy number 1 was. But Guy number 1, despite being an asshole, at least had a personality to work with. One part of this movie that kind of sent me over the edge was this really corny monologue she had at, like, what would have been her wedding, because I don't know what is with these movies, but they all love a corny monologue that would not happen in real life. I don't see anyone doing these type of monologues in real life. The thing about this one, though, I actually had secondhand embarrassment unlike other Hallmark and Hallmark-esque movies, because in this one, they had no idea what she was talking about. So, like, maybe that was for comedic purposes, but to me, I was just embarrassed and, like, physically cringing in my seat. And she wasn't embarrassed, apparently. It just went right over her head, and she went on her merry way. But girl, I was so uncomfortable. There's also no Irish main cast in this, which I thought was kind of bizarre. And then this is a nitpick, but the costuming annoyed me because all of her, it was just corny and cheesy because all of her outfits had something that was green in it. Because did you know she was in Ireland? They had to constantly say it to us, but then they had to constantly show us through her outfits. I don't know. Personally, when I went to Ireland, woman, I didn't purposely wear green in all my outfits. I just wore whatever I wanted to wear. So this was awful. I only watched it in the first place because Lindsay Lohan's like trying to make a comeback. I gave this 1 out of 5 stars. And now for my honorable mentions, I'm just going to say the movie. I'm not going to go into detail about what it's about or what I felt about it. I gave all 5 of these movies 2 stars. So at number 11, we have The Creator. Number 12, Christmas on My Mind. Number 13, El Conde. Number 14, Maestro. And then number 15, Joker Folie à Deux. I apologize for butchering that. And then at number 1, the worst movie I watched in 2024 is The Merry Gentleman. This is about a former Broadway dancer who moves back to her hometown and she creates an all-male dance troupe in order to save her parents' small bar. This is another Netflix Hallmark-esque movie, so I knew I was in for a whirlwind. And let me tell you, you really need to have a suspension of disbelief to make this movie work in some way, shape, or form. So as these movies go, the goal is obviously achieved, and that's where you need to have the suspension of disbelief, because I was like, what do you mean it's achieved in this very small town? So history of the bar nightclub itself, apparently like a lot of famous bands used to perform there, and now they don't anymore, so the place is falling apart. They have like 1 or 2 customers a day. But if they're to achieve their goal, that means they have constant customers flowing through, right? But it's a small town. So are the same women seriously coming to see this dance show every night? And actually it is the same woman because the extras always look the same. You're choosing to come every night with a cover that's $35? Absolutely fucking not. I am not going to no nightclub for $35. And then the other thing that crossed my mind at the end is this nightclub really going to rely on this for the rest of its days? Especially because it's a Christmas theme, not stripper show, because they never actually strip, but how do you describe this? It's like wannabe Magic Mike without the R rating, because it's rated PG. And that's what they're going to rely on for the rest of their days. Like, what's going to happen when it's not Christmas? How are you going to spice things up? Because even when it was Christmas, you were doing a terrible job spicing it up. And it's also just because given this nightclub's beginnings and how it was just totally different types of music, and that's what they went down in history for, and now you're just going to completely change that. You know, so that's what I mean by you need to have a suspension of disbelief, because I feel like this would just not fly in the real world. And like I said, this is a wannabe Magic Mike, so it's a stripper movie of sorts without the stripping. Really, they take off their clothes, not all their clothes, they take off their like shirts to show off their dehydrated looking pecs at one point. And I was expecting better music, but instead, like, they must have had a budget of like $4, because this music is like terrible remixes, I should say, of Christmas classics where the beat is obnoxiously loud to the point where you could kind of hear it. You could hear those speakers struggling for their lives, and it just tickles something in my brain, but not positively. It tickles something uncomfortably in my brain, and I did not have a good time listening to it. Nothing about this movie when it comes to dancing, even though that's a huge part of the movie, is hot and attractive. The dancing's terrible. In the beginning, she's part of the girl, the main character, she's part of this dancing troupe that's clearly supposed to be the Rockettes. But these Rockette wannabes were not at all in sync, and I don't know how, I need to know how many times they took that. How many takes did it take? Because I did read somewhere that for certain movies, sometimes you just have to use the best of what you got. And like, it concerns me that since this is the final product, that's your best. These they're supposed to be on Broadway, and it looks like I'm watching a rehearsal. And not only were they not in sync, but none of the men, you know, the main thing of this movie, were in sync. And you could tell none of these people are dancers. It was all terrible. They were offbeat a lot of the time. And part of me wonders if that's even their fault, because the moves themselves were just lackluster and just not at all attractive. This movie also has a trope that I cannot stand, and I find it in a lot of Hallmark movies, and that is when the main character is made up to be the bad guy when she doesn't want to give up her career for a man she just met like 10 days ago, so not even 2 weeks ago. Personally, I don't think anyone should give up their career for someone they just met, men or women, but I'm going to talk about women specifically just because the subject of this movie is a woman. And when it comes to Hallmark and Hallmark movies, that's who has to give up their career. You know, the businesswoman has to give up her whole career for the guy who just owns a tree farm. But in this one, Chad Michael Murray, he got really mad at her for not telling him the Rockette wannabes wanted her back. He's like, why didn't you tell me? I'm like, first of all, you're actually the first person she's telling. Also, she owes you fucking nothing. Y'all just met not even 2 weeks ago. What do you mean you're like in love with her already? So goes back to suspension of disbelief, because you know in these Hallmark-esque movies, they always fall in love right away. But also, as these movies go, she stays in the small town to somehow run this nightclub on nothing but terrible stripper dancing. And I'm genuinely supposed to believe she willingly gave up Broadway for this man. She gave up Broadway to focus her dance career on this small town nightclub. Okay, alright. Like, I know I said the Rockette wannabes were a terrible dance troupe, but like, she was supposed to be the lead, the most famous. It's like, girl, use that resume to go to a different Broadway show. You got me fucked up if you think I'm giving up Broadway for a man that I hadn't known for 2 weeks. Absolutely fucking not. And honestly, a thing that really dinged this movie was the fact that it's like Magic Mike. I've never seen Magic Mike, so I don't even know if I'm making a proper comparison. But you know, it's a stripper movie that they kept PG. I'm sure this rating contributed to the terrible dancing, because if it's PG, and you know, that means some kids are watching, so you can't get too raunchy, but like, that's what the audience wants. Like, if you're telling me strippers are in this movie, I want something raunchy, you know what I mean? I think that's another reason I couldn't believe, like, these same women kept going back every night for the $35 cover to see these men, because they were told they're strippers. And yet I didn't see anything even close to that, just shirtless guys. In this movie as a whole, you could tell they were holding back on the dance moves. You could tell they were holding back on the jokes. And personally, I think they should have just dropped the Hallmark vibes and gone all out, given an R rating, because that's what a lot of people watched this for. We watched this for the raunchy stripperness, and we didn't get that. It just would have been a much more entertaining movie, and it would have been as hot as these people, as the writers clearly wanted it to be. Because there were certain scenes that were supposed to get you in a certain way, and I'm thinking of the naughty underwear scene, and it's sent me, but not in the way these people intended. I didn't think it was hot. I just thought it was absolutely hilariously ridiculous. So I was laughing, but not for the reason they wanted us to. And also the love interest in this, he's played by Chad Michael Murray, which bless him, but his voice, this is a nitpick, his voice in this was so annoying, and he walked like he had a stick up his ass. But something about this character, he just felt like a stereotypical Hallmark characters. A lot of Hallmark characters are these like hunky handymen, and that's all they're known for. They don't really have a personality outside of that. He just didn't feel any different than other Hallmark love interests that I've seen before. This could have been any other movie, and I feel like Hallmark and Hallmark-esque movies, they fall victim to that, just rewriting the same script over and over again, and this movie is definitely one example. This could have been played by any guy. They probably got Chad Michael Murray just for the views. This was terrible. Managed to be even worse than the one where Lacey Chabert, whatever her last name is, falls in love with a statue turned human. I was expecting that to be in this list, but that was a 2.5er. This, I gave 1 out of 5 stars. So there you have it. These were the most awful movies I watched last year. Let me know down below if you have seen any of these, and what are your thoughts? What terrible movies are we excited for this year? What movies coming out this year do we think are going to be god awful? I know Netflix is going to come out with some other crazy Christmas shit, and I know some of those horror movies I'm going to be watching this year will make next year's list. But let's think positively. Hopefully the quality of movies I watch in 2025 are much better than 2024's. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up, comment, subscribe. Y'all know the drill. And without further ado, I'm going to peace out, and I'll see you guys later. Ciao, tutti.